Now, come on, everybody. We haven't got much time. Focus your mind on something you're very sure of. Your family. Fish and chips.
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
We dig a hole.
You what?
What don't they know?
This time there's three of us.
Trouble shared is a trouble doubled. I only hope the doctor knows how to put all this back.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of a television series you may have heard of called Doctor Who in entirely random order. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and normally this is the part where I say, hey, we're a couple of guys who are into Doctor Who and do a podcast, but actually this time we're not just a couple of guys. There's actually three of us.
Hey.
And I'd like to welcome to Pull to Open a gentleman from another podcast you might know. It's called Radio Free Skaro, and we have Christopher Burgess here.
Hello.
What's up, Chris? How are you?
Not much. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you for being the second Chris on Pull to Open.
Yeah, I'm glad to make things that much more confusing. Yeah,
or easier. Easier. I'm terrible with names, so this is perfect.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to go figure out some naming convention for you guys. So do we have doctors? So it's like first Chris and second Chris, or is it?
Yes, I'm the Chris from the north. I'm the
lots of
Eccleston
podcasts
here.
have a north.
That's true. you guys are from the far north, so there's that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So longtime listeners might know I am from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada originally, and Chris B, and I go way back in that we were both in the same Doctor Who club there, way back in the 80s and early 90s. It was called the 10-0-11.
10-0-11-0-0 by 0
by 0
Black
That's
Sucker.
it. I should know that by heart.
And remind us what that. I feel like we've come across that number in
the galactic coordinates for Gallifrey.
That's
or
right.
if you throw a minus in front of it, the galactic coordinates in E space for Alzarius.
Wow. That's
normal
great.
Space can't have negative coordinates, as we all know. But I've always they've never talked about the 02 in the show, which I find funny. It's almost like I always felt like that 02 was trying to indicate that Gallifrey was weird and special. So even in binary coordinates, they needed a third thing. But I don't know.
I don't know. Zero two in binary would really mess things up.
Right? That's the point. It messes it up. It's out of sync with the universe somehow.
That's just how special Gallifreyan binary is. It's got a 2.
Anyway, we're super glad to reunite and reminisce a bit, as well as celebrate that Western Canada created so many Doctor Who fans through all of the broadcasts through PBS that we got through KSPS TV mainly. That was the main one in Spokane. And then after a while, we got Detroit, right? Like I never watched that, but we got double your doses of Doctor Who for a while.
Yep.
And it just kept coming and coming. So there was this unrelenting cornucopia really of Doctor Who content if you lived in Western Canada in the 80s and 90s.
And Chris, did you also start with Peter Davison? Was he your first Doctor, or were you earlier than that?
That's an awesome question that I have no recollection of.
No recollection. Oh my god!
Wow.
I would have started watching in 83 ish.
Right.
Okay.
Around 8 years old, so I just don't remember that far back as to where I began. If I had to guess, I'd say it would have been Tom Baker, Peter Davison.
Yeah.
You could have been, because I remember when I started, Bob Davison was my first, but they were doing Davison episodes every day during the week, so they were daily broadcasts, and then on the weekends there was the main feature, which was they would edit together a whole story from 4 or 6 Tom Baker episodes, and so they had Tom Baker going on the weekends while Davison was going on during the week. So
that's what made it really tough to try to remember where one began, because KSPS would do that. So not only would we get things on a basically non-ending loop, because we just get the same stuff over and over. Like I'd tell from UK friends how, you know, like, unless you had UK Gold growing up, you'd never get Doctor Who repeats.
Never.
Outside of like Five Faces, maybe.
Yeah, I've said that many times on the podcast. Like Five Faces was like, you know, an oasis in the desert.
Yeah. And we had quite the opposite experience where we just get everything just repeated on a loop ad nauseum. But yeah, during the week, we'd have single episodes on the weekends. Saturday nights, 11 p.m., we'd get the omnibus version of whatever. And they weren't always the same Doctor.
Wow,
it was
it was random, in fact, kind of like
it was
journey
as good as and as a burgeoning fan, I mean, try keeping track of 20 years of Doctor Who history, when you don't know what's going on.
Well, I found it kind of like fascinating or kind of an interesting challenge as a fan, because you have this continuity you're following during the week, and then this separate continuity you're following on the weekends, and you kind of like, it's like multiple timelines almost.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of found it like, oh, I can sort of sample from here and there, and that gave you, I think, probably a greater appreciation for the larger universe that the show was creating.
I had to sort of like imagine old episodes based on the episode description in the 20th anniversary book. The Peter Haney book, and was mine.
Somewhere in the shelf.
If you're one of the lucky kids who had a celebration or Key to Time, and you can actually piece this stuff together, you're laughing.
Yeah, I live by those programs.
Until you start learning about missing episodes. And then wonder why you're not seeing the Mythmakers or you're not seeing, you know, Space Pirates or whatever.
Yes, indeed. Well, not yet. We have had a lot of look on Pull to Open in terms of the animated episodes seem to be just ahead of our schedule, our very random schedule.
So far we haven't gotten into a full-on Lost episode yet. Well, someday.
So speaking of where we've been, let's cut to the previously on Pull to Open, and it's been a way long journey than I can remember. Barely remember where it began. I lie, it was Planet of Fire. And then like King's Demons, right? So we've been very master heavy here on Pull to Open. But
Davison heavy.
And Davison heavy, we're right back in it, but spoiler. But 4 episodes ago, we were at Tom Baker's Revenge of the Cybermen. That was fun. 3 episodes ago, the randomizer heard our prayers, brought us back to New Who with Rosa. And then after Rosa, Pete made a challenge to the randomizer, which was, I think he almost said literally, take us to Time Flight. I just want to say, Pete, are you proud of yourself?
A little bit. I think my influence on the randomizer has only deepened time. So,
Pete, you made our guest watch Time Flight. Are you happy? Are you proud of yourself?
I'm incredibly proud of myself. And I'll reveal why during the pod.
Okay. Sorry, spoiler alert. We've skipped ahead. But 3 episodes ago we were at Rosa. 2 episodes ago we went to the Witchfinders because the randomizer decided it liked Jodie Whittaker and the Fam 1.0. And then last time we went to one of those missing / animated episodes, Fury from the Deep, in which we learned more than we ever wanted to learn about North Sea gas and weed.
It's most weed references
references in a Pull to Open episode ever yet. Who knows?
Gave us a bit of a buzz, that one.
It really did. But we went straight from Fury of the Deep to another sort of like hot topical, here's the buzzing thing that everyone's talking about in the news, with Concorde, the setting for Time Flight.
Yeah.
Wow. And Time Flight has already cropped up in Pull to Open history, hasn't it? I feel like you mentioned it, Pete, when we were talking about the way that the TARDIS was often disassembled in the Peter Davison era. And this is like the most disassembly ever.
Totally.
Of the TARDIS.
Well, apart from Frontios, which we've also done.
Well, yeah.
Because then it was literally disassembled.
That was a very rapid disassembly. Unplanned. But
Yeah, just to recap a little bit. So at Rosa, I said, take us somewhere that also has something to do with transportation, which was kind of and I think I did name check Time Flight at one
You
point
did.
because it's like that's probably the most obvious example. So it took it a couple weeks, but it finally was, oh yeah, that actually, good idea. So there was that. And yeah, the Davison era, it's funny. We've done a bunch of Davison. We've never done one though from season 19. So this is Davison's first season. And it's also strangely one of the only hyphenated episodes of Doctor Who. It has sort of like that interesting aspect to it because it's not time, space, flight. It's time - flight.
Yes.
Which I guess makes it a prefix, right? Time is now a prefix.
Time is fleeting. Yeah, it is. It's a weird title, not quite as weird as the what was it going to be? Xanadum, something like that. But
something like that.
Yeah, Time Flight's definitely preferable to that. But yeah, it's also interesting to be here, and we'll get into current news because this episode features Tegan and the Master, both of whom are about to come back. We're recording this about a week and a bit before the Power of the Doctor.
Yeah. Do you want to get into that now? Let's talk about it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, man, Power of the Doctor. It's like imminent. So when people hear this, it'll actually be really imminent because we're going to post this podcast like the day before.
But we just got the second trailer. Is it the second trailer?
Yeah, because the first one was like a teaser.
Yeah.
I think at the end of Legend of the Sea Devils, which I guess counts as the trailer.
Yeah,
it's second trailer.
Yeah,
and there wasn't a lot of new stuff, right?
Not a lot.
There was.
Chris can perhaps help us out here. You're probably watching news more closely than we are. What was your reaction to the trailer?
Relief that we finally had one. And then disappointment that it had nothing really consequential. But I mean, it's a trailer. It's not there to tell you the story. It's there to whet the appetite, and that's what it did.
Well, the big question is, we did see a shot in the trailer of the pull to open sign on the TARDIS has been changed. So the question is, do we need to now permanently change the name of the podcast to Ha 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 Ha? That's apparently what it now says.
Yeah,
a few more haws, perhaps, but yeah.
We would have had to call it Bad Wolf a number of years ago too.
Good point. So. Good point. Yeah. Maybe when we get there, we can change it for one special episode only.
when he gets to Power of the Doctor for the review episode.
Yeah. Or when we get to like Parting of the Ways or whatever, we can change the name to Bad Wolf. But yeah, I'm excited. I just read the all of the Doctor Who magazine stuff. Seems pretty cool. Kind of another interesting reason for us to be at Time Flight that the Master is going to take on a lot of disguises in Power of the Doctor.
Definitely looks like he shaves somewhere mid-episode. So there's that.
I hope we see that. We just cut to a scene in the Master in the bathroom.
Unlike Time Flight, where he gets more facial.
From racist mustache to classic Anthony Ainley beard. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get to that.
Absolutely.
But first of all,
I think we should enter perhaps the pull to open feedback loop.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys. The feedback loop is happening, and the first up in the first feedback loop, we have to, guys. We gotta ask, if you join the podcast, would you please leave a review? Go ahead. Fire up your Apple Podcast app. Leave a very brief review. It doesn't take much. You can leave one emoji, one character. It's completely fine. Those work, but reviews obviously will help the visibility of the podcast. It will improve our chances of being seen by other Doctor Who fans who will of course be looking for podcasts to talk about the cool episode they're going to see or about to see in the Power of the Doctor. So leaving a review now would be really great.
Leave us a review and leave Radio Free Skaro a review while you're there. I mean, why not? But Pete, there was a very good question someone raised on YouTube this week. I saw it, which is, what if I don't have an iPhone? What if I'm not in the Apple ecosystem?
Okay, well, what you're going to have to do is, fire up your TARDIS, go back in time to right when you were about to buy your phone, deck yourself, knock yourself out, grab yourself's wallet, buy an iPhone instead of the Android, and then when you come to at that time, you'll have an iPhone, and then you'll be able to leave the review. Short of that, I'm sure you have a friend.
Yeah.
Who has an iPhone. Borrow it for 5 minutes. Again, you only have to leave one character, one emoji. Like the podcast, that'd be awesome. 5 stars. I'm not telling you what to write, but we do have a special place in our heart for those 5-star reviews.
Apple Podcasts definitely best, but there are other podcast services you might be listening on that definitely have a way to give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review or anything. Just just throw us a bone.
Wherever you're listening, Stitcher, Breaker. Okay, I won't go over all the things, but there's something that lets you rate it. But it would be great.
And what you're listening to, probably in the background, as we discuss this, right, Pete, is something that an incredible Pull to Open fan made for us.
Yeah. So speaking of fans and super fans doing things for the pod, a great fan by the name of Martin West, aka Thinking Fish on Twitter. He was amazing and actually cut a whole bunch of music specific for this podcast. So he actually thought what we had in the background here for the feedback loop might not be quite Doctor Who-y enough. And now we have definitely a more Doctor Who-y tune going on. I'm only imagining it right now because we're going to do it in the cut, but I've heard it. It's really great. And Martin, thanks so much for taking some time to give us a bit of an upgrade, if you will, for the pod.
Indeed, so, I'm definitely hoping those Doctor Who-ish notes are not copyrighted by the BBC. I do love, by the way, did you see the RTD sort of going off on, was it Ryan Gosling who was wearing the off-brand Shooty Gatwa t-shirt?
Yeah.
He's like, we're going to sue him for copyright infringement. It's...
Yeah. You don't provide a real thing to have. You know, it's fine. It's like when Napster was the only game in town you couldn't actually download music. It was kind of okay.
Oh, it was a perfect RTG joke. I loved it. But we often say RTD call us on this podcast. So call us if there are any issues or you just want to join in.
Cool. Next up in the feedback loop, our YouTube channel continues to grow. We're at youtube.com/pull-to-open. We keep doing more from season 2, so we'll keep updating the podcasts we hadn't uploaded in the pre-YouTube era. They're still coming at you. We're up to the Crotons. We might be by the Crotons. I think the Crotons, there might be another one after that at this point, but that was a good one.
Yeah.
That was our first Prouton.
Yeah, this is the era where I had long hair, so that's interesting to go back and watch on YouTube. I'm sort of frozen on some of them, which I guess we didn't have the video for that at that point. But that's just so you know, I'm not just exceptionally good at being still, not being hypnotized by the master. It is just a screenshot. But yeah, go listen, go watch.
I think we should start the legend that when we don't have video, those are our missing episodes. Like we
That's
had
right.
Video,
it was
in a closet somewhere.
It's time for some telesnap reconstruction.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Big Finish, you go ahead and animate me. It's
Yeah.
fine. multiply the Easter eggs behind me. I would love that.
Exactly. Just fill the room with Daleks behind us. I love that idea. Yeah.
But believe it or not, we actually get some great comments on YouTube, and I wanted to highlight one of them as the comment of the week. It's from a gentleman named Nathan Smith, and this is on one of our Fury from the Deep videos. And Nathan says, Victoria definitely benefits from seeing her run in order. But if one were to speedrun through her era, the evil of the Daleks and Tomb of the Cybermen are foundational to getting her. She's just a sweet girl who lost her father tragically and had to go with the Doctor because the only other option was staying on Skaro, and nobody wants that. She loves being with Jamie and the Doctor, but she's not cut out for adventuring, which incidentally is why I rejected a conception of Season 6B that involves her coming back on board. She just wouldn't. And I really wanted to highlight this comment, one, because it supports my view of Season 6B, and it didn't happen, and it's just a theory. But what I wanted to also mention, like, I was a little hard on Victoria in the podcast because, again, it was like in Fury from the Deep, she kind of seems a little panicky at the danger, which, again, I gave, it's totally valid that she wasn't up for the constant danger that a TARDIS companion is it so you sort of generally sign up for when you join up with the Doctor. And I did mention I wanted to see more of her run. So yeah, I look forward to seeing these ones, Evil the Daleks. I've seen Tomb of the Cybermen before. It's the only other one I've seen with Victoria, but I look forward to sort of getting to know her a little better and not feeling like she's just there to scream, which she seems like that's her main role, at least in Fury from the Deep.
I mean,
that's literally her role because she defeats the weed with it.
Defeats the weed. Yeah, this is sort of kind of the negative side of Pull to Open and going in random order, right? You do sometime, we're going to encounter it again today with Edric, like we're kind of, sort of not really getting the emotional arcs of the characters. That said, I don't think that anything that Nathan here mentions kind of wipes out the fact that Victoria just like almost refuses to scream at some point, which is like supposed to be the whole resolution of Fury of the Deep. She's like, but it's just so silly.
Not her finest hour.
But I didn't actually know that about the Evil of Daleks. Not seen it. Didn't know that the only other option was staying on Skaro. But it does make me think they could have added a line of dialogue to Fury of the Deep where she just says, "I could have stayed on Skaro. It would have been better than this. Damn you, Doctor."
Flaming city in the background, and what was the swamp? The silver swamp. I forget what it is. Anyway, Chris Mead, what do you think? What's Victoria? What's your what are your thoughts on her run?
She's definitely a screamer. Yes.
Perhaps the greatest.
Perhaps the greatest.
I mean, the only one who's...
She very probably is the greatest, yes.
The only one whose screams are actually used as the resolution of a story, right?
Yeah, at least that comes to my mind, for sure. Not
a title anyone else was really vying for, I don't know.
She's very much enjoyable in Tomb, especially that little couple scenes between her and I can't remember the character's name, the woman who's paying for the whole trip. And
it's Kaftan.
Kaftan. And then of course the scene between her and the Doctor. That everyone hopefully knows about.
When she's talking about her family, or he's talking about his family, sort of how he pictures them. Yeah, it's a nice soft scene between the two of them.
It's that being her second story. It's a great way for them to bond, and but then you get to things like Ice Warriors, and she screams, or Fury from the Deep, and she screams.
This is great. I feel like we're getting a foretaste of our future here, because I'm sort of like taking a deliberate policy of like not watching any episodes that the randomizer does not take us to. There's a lot of old Who I haven't seen, so I like these sort of meetings with other time travelers where we learn what is in our future.
It's a little bit of spoilers.
There's only a few years separating her and say Katarina, for example. But Katarina was hired, and then they decided very, very quickly that this, as a somebody from basically prehistory,
right?
She can't be there as a companion. She's just not going to be useful.
Yeah.
Given the Victorian era nature of Victoria, she would be less useless. But
right.
It's still
they could have done better. And I say the same thing about Jamie.
Right.
Because
Jamie's pretty effective as the muscle, though.
He very much so. But as far as anything involving intellect is concerned, he gets better, but he starts off very, very rocky.
I did think about that when they have the chemistry lab scene in the TARDIS in Fury from the Deep. And there's that moment of like, well, wait a minute. There must have been sort of like some kind of elementary bring Victoria up to speed in new developments in chemistry, and kind of just explaining to Jamie what chemistry even is.
I mean, Jamie would have a basic understanding through, like, say, gunpowder, perhaps.
Yeah.
But, I mean, very limited.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of education up there in the Highlands in the 18th century.
No.
Well, good thing they switched to Zoe quickly. The Doctor was probably feeling a little bit like, okay, I've got to walk people through basic stuff a little too much here.
Yeah, as so often in the history of Who companions, it's like, let's go to the exact opposite.
Well, that's just it. They swung too far the other way, I think. But
if you think about it, all humans must sort of seem that way to the Doctor to some extent. Like even people from the future and stuff. He's like, hey, I'm a Time Lord. I've got all the technology and time and space at my disposal. But I don't know. I guess for us, it could be a little different. Alrighty. So moving on in the feedback loop, just a reminder, go ahead and follow us on TikTok, where we're very active, still uploading videos every week. We're at Pull2Open, all one word, and also on Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63. Go ahead and drop us a line, drop us some music. I mean, we've already got some new ones, but, go ahead and give us some tips or some Big Finish tips, which we always like.
And our TikToks are pretty much all on YouTube as well, right? As kind of mini videos. So
shorts, mini videos.
So you can still see if you have any sort of ideological issue with TikTok, you just go to YouTube. Just catch up on all of the TikToks there.
Yeah, and if you have an ideological problem with YouTube, go ahead and find us on. Yes, perhaps more likely, you can find us on Spotify video podcasts. So we're there too if you want to see what we look like without giving the big G any of your data.
Yes, and if you have issues with Spotify, then I don't know what to tell you. Go watch us on Stitcher. I don't think they've had any moral conundrums yet.
There's got to be some kind of decentralized podcast platform we're not on. And if there isn't, let's start one. Okay. All right, guys. I think we have to start talking about time flight at some point.
We do, and you know what that means, Pete.
I do.
I mean, unless we want to subject our guest to the ravages of TLDW.
I don't think we want to do that again.
No.
I'd like Chris to come back. So.
Exactly. We want to be nice to our guests. We don't want to make them summarize 4 episodes in the space of 2 minutes, which is basically what you've got, Pete. This is TLDW. Too long didn't watch, or too long Doctor Who, or in the case of Time Flight, too long don't watch. Hey, no. Sorry.
Oh.
Revealing my bias a little too early there. Sorry about that. Pete, I know we're going to say nice things about Time Flight. I just want to flag that ahead of time. We're all going to find things that we like about the show. We like to be generally positive here on Pull2Open. So don't worry if Time Flight is your favorite story. We're not going to rag on it too much.
Well, one of us might. And one of us might think it's criminally underrated. We'll just say that.
And then Chris can step in and just be like, guys, just stop fighting. Good and bad things, right?
It can be the ref.
Yeah, exactly.
The final vote.
But we do this thing where we summarize the story in 30 seconds per classic episode, 1 minute per New Who episode, which means that for the 4 episodes of Time Flight, Pete, you have 2 minutes. How do you feel about summarizing a story that is, I mean, I'm so glad that it's not me this week. That's all I can say. Like, oh my God, like I don't understand a lot of Time Flight. We'll get to that issue, but how do you feel about summarizing?
I feel okay. I've seen this one enough times. So as you know, I grew up with Davison. I was fortunate to have a VCR at the time. I recorded all his episodes. And this is what I've seen several times. So I feel pretty good about it. The only danger might be I know too much. And I, stumble down a rabbit hole and just start saying way too much about what's going on.
Yes, do remember to include in the summary how the Doctor got the wrong era that they're in, or like he messes up his spend at least 30 seconds on that, at least 30 seconds on the other Concorde. Yeah, you're right, plenty of rabbit holes here. So if you're ready, sir,
as I'll ever be,
your tabs are closed. We fly blind on TLDW, and I will interject with 30-second increments, and your 2-minute summary of Time Flight starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
So the Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa are just done with Earthshock, where Adric died. They're very mournful about that. But the Doctor wants to take them all to Hyde Park to sort of cheer them up because they can't go back and save him. He's very adamant about that. So when they try to get there, they get the TARDIS gets zinged by something, but they materialize instead in modern day 1983 above a Heathrow Airport. So they materialize in the airport. There's a big security thing, but what's going on here? Oh my goodness, a TWO Concorde
30
flight has
seconds.
just disappeared. And the doctor realizes there's been, that's the same thing that screwed up the TARDIS. So he investigates, and he's given full sanction to do that by unit. They check it, they get another Concorde. They end up going through the same time eddy. They think they're back at Heathrow, but they're not really. It's an illusion, and they realize they're actually in the Jurassic period, and there's this weird citadel, and there's the remains of a spaceship. So they go and investigate, and they find there's this guy, Khalid, who is like basically trying to manipulate things and penetrate this thing, the citadel, and they're not sure why, but he has this psychic power, and he's using it to create things called plasmatons, and they managed to defeat him pretty easily. But it turns out he's not Khalid. He's actually the Master. He takes off the disguise, and the Master gets access to the Doctor's TARDIS, starts pulling equipment out, abandons the TARDIS. They realize that it's actually this race, the Xeraphin, that he's after, that has somehow ended up in Jurassic Earth. And they basically work to free the Xeraphin from the Master's hold. But the Master actually gets him like at the heart of his TARDIS. So his TARDIS is like supercharged. But what happened was when he tried to take components from the Doctor's TARDIS, they were switched around. Therefore, he got the wrong components. So therefore, they could actually make a bargain with him to get the right component and screw up his plans to go to conquer the world, the universe. And they get to the Heathrow just in time to knock the Master through time and space, but they accidentally leave, or intentionally leave Tegan there.
Time! Oh my goodness! Yeah, you just got it. Wow, that's a photo finish there. Congratulations, you got right to Tegan. Yes.
I think the only thing I missed is they got one of the Concordes back.
one of the Concordes back. The other one is somewhere under Pangaea. Yeah.
It's actually surprising to think there's enough story to go more than 2 minutes on a Sunday for time flight.
I mean, you didn't even mention Professor Hater.
I didn't know. Yeah, he was kind of blinking. You miss it almost. Yeah. Although I will say he's memorable.
He's so memorable. Yeah. And can I just say, Professor Hater? Like we're going to focus on stuff we like it. I love Professor Hater.
Yeah,
I love him.
You're a lover on Hater.
I'm a lover and a hater.
Hater lover.
I'm not a hater. Like there are moments when you're a hater, but I kind of love to hate Hater. You know, and I like him.
He's great.
First of all, because he's described as a professor at the University of Darlington, which is actually a very poverty-stricken town in the northeast of England, very near where I grew up. And there is no University of Darlington. Well, there is now. There's like an addendum to a polytechnic that was for this Teesside University for that. But
is this one of those things where Doctor Who predicted the future?
Yes,
accidentally.
If you
know, like the decimal system and all that.
If you want to say it that way, but there's one point at which the Doctor, like, you know, says something like, "Is that, you know, you only believe the evidence of your eyes? Is that the philosophy of Darlington men?" And I'm just like, as if it's like Oxford men or Cambridge men. Or first of all, the men is still kind of weird, 1982. But also,
Darlington bros.
Yeah. The philosophy of Darlington men is like, let's go have a pint. You know, it's generally as far as it goes. They don't really get into sort of eidetic or like. So much of the technobabble that the Doctor talks about, the Professor. But yeah, what I most love about Professor Hater, and again, I feel like we need to add this to the TLDW as just a footnote. The fact that he dies and then he comes back, and he's just like, "Screw you, story. I don't. Death is not the end for me." And it's not ever really like, it's supposedly, maybe it's an illusion that the Master creates, but it's not really kind of explained. But then he just you don't see him again. Like I so want Big Finish to do a Professor Hater spin-off now, where he's just, I don't know, maybe he's found a TARDIS of his own, maybe he's off with the Xeraphin.
He's like, it's kind of like one of these things in, you know, like he's Obi-Wan, you know what I mean? Like and you don't really know what the rules of it are. You just know he can do some things in the real world, but he can't be a full-on, you know, person player, I guess, which is what's sort of the rules, I guess, of the Force Ghost back in the original trilogy. Obviously, that was all thrown out the window in the new trilogy.
I like that he gets a motivation right before he dies, which is to know all the knowledge in the universe. All of a sudden.
he fulfills his purpose, I think, which is mostly to take that bullet for Nyssa.
Yes.
And the actor needs to make you care about him just enough that means something, and I think he succeeds. So Hader's, yeah, I'm with you. Hader's one of the better parts of the story.
Yeah, Hater's not going to hate.
Yeah.
What do you think of Hater, Chris?
Well, Hater's fine. I do enjoy his brief relationship with the Doctor, especially when they go to the other people from the other Concorde, and they're trying to fob off explaining things to people, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, talk to Hater." Hater's like, "Oh, the Doctor's the expert on this
Right.
subject." And they're just just trying to pass the buck.
You'd think that Hater would like relish the opportunity to be, Mr. Mansplain in that moment, but no, apparently not. Yeah.
I made note of and it's something to do with the era. I realize, but I made note of a couple reasonably misogynistic things from the story, and one of them is something something you guys just touched on, and you're right. Hater probably would have taken the opportunity to mansplain anything and everything he had a chance to do, not only being the early 80s, but also being somebody of his age in the early 80s, because he would have been 60s or 70s, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, here is Doctor Who daring to do something not at all different by taking the sort of the stereotype of the fusty English professor and just running with it. Like, he's just such a stereotype, but we love him.
But Pete, you mentioned that Hater's there to take the bullet, so Nyssa doesn't have to when the Xeraphin absorb him, as it were. But he's his line about, "Oh, I'm a scientist. I want to know all the secrets of the universe," as it were. But what's Nyssa? Nissa's a scientist.
Yeah.
he's also his specialty is like hypnosis and whatnot. So let's take that a step further and assume psychology or parapsychology or something like that. Nissa's still more of a traditional scientist than he would be. So his role in that seems a little misogynistic in my books. But,
yeah, and it's definitely misogynistic that the Doctor just sort of plucks him out like, "Oh, you're an old white guy. You'll be best able to resist the images that we're going to be bombarded with." Like,
well, that's I found that actually totally fine, because he was. He proved he was. He was the only guy in the original crew and passengers who had resisted on his own. So. Yeah, I thought that was good. I actually thought that was a good little twist, because you would think the Doctor would want his buddies, essentially the flight crew from the second Concorde, to go with him, but he basically says, "No, I need to make sure I have the person most resistant." So I thought that was a very kind of like, I'm going to be calculating about this and smart about it.
It's sort of weird. I mean, it's definitely an example of like there's so much kind of reversal and like throwing in new ideas that like it makes Moffat look restrained.
It's ambitious. It's an ambitious story. This is the thing, and ultimately, like, this is sort of my thinking on Time Flight. I think it's surprisingly good in the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Like it starts off really strong, and just never really quite finishes. Never comes close to that awesome cliffhanger at the end of the second episode. Which, again, in hindsight, yes, Khalid kind of makes no sense. The whole disguise, and it's been picked apart. And I think you can headcanon your own reason it might work, even though there's really very little at all in the episode to help you. But man, when I was watching this with my kids and there was that big unmasking at the end of episode 2, they were totally into it. They wanted to see the next episode. They were like, "Holy cow, this is cool. This has suddenly got really good because the Master's here." Because they didn't know. Obviously, they were just like, "Oh wow, Master, cool." So that's a twist.
So it's an interesting time to be discussing this, because we know, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know any Power of the Doctor details, mute me for 15 seconds. But the Master is going to change disguises in Power of the Doctor quite a lot, according to Saturday One. So here he is with the one disguise that I gotta say. So we've been to the Talons of Wen Chiang on Pull to Open. We discussed the sort of the kind of the famously racist aspects of that. I found this worse in terms of the.
Oh, yeah?
It is a caricature of a very sort of a the mystic Oriental kind of figure, right? He's got his incantations. I think he says he's Arabian at some point. Does Kelly?
sure.
He talks of going to Arabia, but not necessarily being Arabian.
But he's got the Fu Manchu mustache. Like, it's very clear.
bit.
And Anthony Ainley, bless his cotton socks, supposedly would love like being the master. Even if you like called him up on the phone, he would just like do the master voice, like answer the phone as the master. Like, he loved doing, he was independently wealthy. Like, he didn't need to be doing any of this. He just loved being the bad guy. And he loved like putting on disguises and all that stuff. His glee is so clear here. And that's definitely a positive side. But it's sort of like, my feeling was like, you've invited a guy to a dinner party who says he's very good at impressions, and then he pulls out this impression of sort of this ancient Chinese mystic, and you're like, no, not that, no. You're sort of frantically signaling to him, like, no.
You wouldn't get that in 83. Everyone would just be laughing right on, with it. And I see what you're saying. Obviously, it's a problematic mask, shall we say. But man, nothing is worse than that yellow face in Talon. So I can't, I'm not with you that it's worse. I would say it's getting there.
Well, at least we have the sort of like racism is explored in Talons, right? He's kind of throwing it back at his audience,
Yes.
I wonder what people would say if we actually had Marco Polo to watch. Given there are no Asian actors in a story set in China.
Right.
I mean, even in other circumstances like Mind of Evil, for example, we have the Chinese soldier played by an Asian woman, Ping Cho. So we have some representation there.
Yeah,
Talons is obviously the one that everyone points at, but there's no shortage, I think, of missteps.
What about Abominable Snowman? Was that actually?
Yes, actually, that's a heck of a good example, especially in the wake of the Blu-ray, the home video release, because the screening they had for that at the BFI recently. So Gary Russell, who directed the animation, when they did the animation for it, they quote unquote changed the actors, as it were, to give them a more Asian look, because at the time all the actors were white, so yellow face. So they tried to change that in the animation, 50 years later.
Right. Yeah, but a bit easier to get away with makeup like that when it's in black and white.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, putting aside, I know it's the hard to do, but putting aside the problematic nature of the mask, I got to say it is one of his better disguises in that I really couldn't tell it was Ainley.
Oh no, definitely no.
And there's the whole thing where he's fallen down and he's sort of writhing there on the ground, and he has that like gross snot coming out of his mask, and it's just like, oh wow, they really went all out on this sort of go death of Khalid.
Did your kids question the presence of the green goo?
I think they just both went, ew. What's up with that? Just had some really bad cold, I guess. And then just let it all out when he died.
According to the production notes, the Fu Manchu mustache there is there to hide the joins in the face prosthetics.
Makes sense.
So I don't know what they could have done otherwise to hide that.
Yeah,
so
good point.
It might be there for necessity rather than anything racially motivated.
So the mucus, it's good you mentioned the mucus. It's supposedly that was the original Peter Grimwade, the writer's original idea for the plasmatons, was to have them be very sort of gross mucusy creatures. So famously, like, they got different costumes that were really bad, and the extras inside the costumes couldn't see out of them, and then they're just sort of these weird grey bubbles. They were not as bad as I thought they were going to be, given the reputation, but they were supposed to be all mucus. Like, that was the original idea. They would just be mucus monsters.
Well, my issue, like, one, you can see their legs. Two, they kind of look nothing like the special effect of the bubbly mist stuff that happens, which gave me a hard time. Like, is it supposed to be the same thing? I guess it is. And in one case it's this, and in the other case it's, being surrounded by guys in gray bubble costumes. So you kind of in real time doing headcanon, which is kind of never really a great sign of like, needing to catch up. It happens all, every now and then with Doctor Who, but in this case, it's just pretty egregious. And by the time, at least they don't really have them much in the last 2 episodes. And this is sort of where I start putting together a little bit of my headcanon on like what Khalid was for and how that affected whether or not he could use the plasmatons, it seems, because it's like, there's no reason for him to dress up. I mean, that's just like,
No.
he just seems to be playing dress up for no reason at all. So you have to sort of make something up that is there's got to be more to the disguise than just abusing himself. And I think it has to do with sort of the incantations he's saying to conjure up the plasmatons and that sort of focusing crystal that he has. And for some reason this Khalid persona is better able to do that. And that I haven't really figured out how that works, but I remember reading in the discontinuity guide that there's some speculation there might have been like a real Khalid that the master replaced at some point. And
well, isn't that was literally true in the script, right? That Grimwade was ordered to include the master by John Nathan Turner.
Yes.
Yeah,
he was.
So
fulfill that contract. Yeah.
Well, and the master is also meant to be killed off in the story. On top of that. But
I couldn't pull the trigger.
The whole Master Khalid thing, I'm sure better people than us have discussed this to death, but I can understand if the Master had to dress up as Khalid when the Doctor was involved in the story, like when they were there in the Citadel together for the Master to hide his presence. But before, why? Like, I just don't get the point to him having to do it before. Yes. So yeah, maybe there was something extenuating, like there was a real Khalid. I don't know.
Method acting, Luffy. Method acting. He's just
I gotta think.
Maybe he really get into that role.
I think he might have stole the crystal, maybe from Khalid, and then it's only responds to Khalid, and so maybe that's also why the disguise has all the snot and everything, right? It's like there's some sort of genetic component it's scanning for. It's kind of like, remember the Dalek? What's it called? A progenitor device that scans for Dalek DNA. So this thing was scanning for Khalid DNA, and so he had to sort of play the part for this machine,
or even something more basic like facial recognition.
Yeah, or that. Yeah, but then it's like, I guess the incantations are part of the whole thing. He's just acting so weird, and he's saying these things. It's like, wait, why was he doing that?
Saying the thing isn't also affecting the odd accent to go with him as well.
Yeah.
It is sort of weird because when he unmasks himself, the Doctor says something like, "I don't get it," and the Master says, "You never do, Doctor." "Oh, I don't understand." "You never do, Doctor." And the audience is like, "Well, we don't understand either. What the hell?"
but we're confident it will be explained in episode 3. In this case, episode 5, I guess. But it is funny because they're wrapping it up, and you're thinking like, is this a 2-episoder? As that's happening, and they're defeating him, and then it's like, oh no, big plot twist. And so it sort of really gets going, and it's just sort of too bad episodes 3 and 4 just never come anywhere near matching that level of excitement.
Speaking of cliffhangers, the end of episode 3, I don't think I've seen a cheesier like zoom in cliffhanger in anywhere in Doctor Who, where it's like, it means the Master's finally defeated me.
Just you wait till we do Resurrection of the Daleks.
But it's like, would the Doctor, like, they immediately have to talk him out of it? Like, what are you having an attack of depression, Doctor? What the hell? Like, why would you just say that?
Well, yeah, overstatement of the year as well.
And also, it's like, has he, like, it's a bunch of technobabble. Well, what does that mean, Doctor? It means the Master's finally defeated me. Well, like, there's so many, I don't know. We can get into the technobabble of it, but like, there's the induction.
There's so much.
There's the induction loop thing
Yeah.
that's coming out of the Master's TARDIS and going in two directions, and that's what's creating this back. Well, like, you've got these people who are tearing apart a giant sarcophagus. Maybe they could just, like, cut this wire. That's, I don't know.
Cut it back a bit.
Yeah, pair of bolt cutters. Yeah. You know, the Doctor's lost his sonic at this point, and maybe he's like, oh, I've forgotten how to use scissors as well.
Well, they could have just used one of those like slates from the side of the room to smash it a couple times. Yeah, there's so much technobabble. It's like induction loop. There's another line where he's like, he must have exhausted his own dynamorphic generator. And there's just thing after thing after thing. I got to say, this might be a taste thing, but I like this stuff. I mean, I live for this stuff. When especially the Davison era, like, it's nonstop. It just was one of these things he would do in every episode, whether it's a warp ellipse or some other thing. And the thing is, it's like, it's more about his delivery, right? Like, I think Davison is he's actually really good in this episode. And I think when he's at his best, when he's sort of blathering out this technobabble, like, it's super important. Like, he really sells it. And so, like, I was right there with it for most of the time. And I certainly got, even though the induction loop kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And by the way, if it's a loop around this room within a room, how the hell did Tegan and Nyssa go through a door that goes into that room, right? Like, that was kind of like an era of, like, set design, I think, that they just didn't really think about.
It's also kind of a missed opportunity, because speaking of Tegan and Nyssa and the Master, like, they both have beefs with the Master.
Yeah.
And there's such an opportunity for a scene of, like, you know, you killed my dad, you've still stolen his face, you bastard. And also, you killed my Auntie Vanessa. Like, but nothing. No opportunity for that. It's like a lot of
even a step beyond that with Auntie Vanessa being a victim of the tissue compression eliminator. And then you have the Xeraphin with the same fate. There could have been something there for Tegan to work off.
Right.
Yeah, and it's another one of those, it's Chekhov's gun type moments where they talk about the tissue compression eliminator. And I like that bit where it's like they pull up the dolls and it's this slow realization that, wait a minute, this isn't religious figurines. These were actual dudes. And that's nice, but you kind of want to see it then work. You know, you want to see him kill someone with it.
Especially when he's holding the thing for half his time on screen as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird as a compressed figurine. I don't think we've ever seen one that looks like it's just an unpainted character. Like, it's so the myth of time, and perhaps we can separate myth from reality. Like, what people say about Time Flight is that, like, it ran out of budget, or the season ran out of budget, and I can see how, well, does TV production really work that way? I don't know. But it does definitely feel like at that point, the show has just flat out run out of budget. We cannot even afford to paint this figurine. We cannot afford to show you what's in the sarcophagus. You know, we can't
afford one stinking dinosaur in the background, like one tail of a brontosaurus, just, you know, in the jungle or whatever. It makes no sense. And I think you wanted to talk about this at the outset, Chris, where the Doctor says it's the Jurassic period, but then he says the Pleistocene's about to happen.
There's a nip in the air, so the Pleistocene. Yeah, first, it doesn't quite get how climate works, but it's a bit weird. Chris, do you know anything about the sort of the run out of budget aspect of this? I know Peter Davison has said it a few times.
Not a heck of a lot, no. All I really know about season 19 is at the other end of it, where they shot it dramatically out of order. Like Ashvalva was the fourth thing shot, ostensibly because Davison wanted to do the other stuff first to find the character. But in reality, it's because the scripts weren't actually ready. But the back end of it, not so much. So I'm assuming that this was shot last, so that would make sense if they ran out of money.
Right.
And I'm sure Earthshock cost them a small fortune with, you know, Cybermen and all the all the shooting and explosions and whatnot.
And is it not a little bit weird that we just had Earthshock, we just had a spaceship crash into prehistoric Earth, and now here we are at another spaceship crashed into prehistoric Earth.
An older
older,
prehistoric.
but like not even one mention of Adric or like.
Well, there was he was there, like Matthew Waterhouse was.
He
The
was,
illusion
yes.
version of Adric is there guarding the Xeraphin chamber.
Supposedly because they wanted his name in the Radio Times for those of us obsessives, and I was definitely one of those who would
Also
read the Radio Times in advance.
Contractual obligations as well, but yeah, they wanted his name in the Radio Times so that people wouldn't figure that he was killed off the story before.
Yeah, which does preserve the surprise. But yeah, you'd think there would be more about him. This is something people say about Time Flight a lot, that it's like they get over Adric awfully quickly. I gotta say, as a regular Pull to Open listeners know, I recently lost my dad. I get it. I get the sort of the grieving thing of like, no, you want to go off and do something happy instead. Let's go check the cricket scores. In Heathrow.
Right.
Like, I love that the Doctor just runs out for a paper and is like tutting over the state of English cricket.
Yeah, I think I like those moments. So there's a lot of good actual humor in Time Flight. I think that sort of bridging scene they have at the beginning, I'm curious what you both think on whether that was good to do. And I think because I can see the dilemma. It was such a moment at the end of Earthshock. I think you kind of need to deal with the aftermath in whatever happens next for fans. But you could, but the problem is as you've seen, it's as we've just said, it's like you're doing this adventure and then the tone is completely off. The other thing they could have done is 3 months later or whatever, it's like they could even say that explicitly in dialogue. It's been a few months since Adric, Doctor, blah blah blah. Instead, they're actually literally going over a list of stuff to do after to wrap up all the stuff we saw in Earthshock.
Yeah.
So
one of which is Cyberfleet dispersed. Which
not destroyed.
Not destroyed, just dispersed. With no explanation. How do you disperse a Cyberfleet? I don't know.
Well, I presume the conference there to ally themselves against the Cybermen worked. And they just did it. But you think that would take a little time and take a little time after returning the freighter crew to their own time, which was another thing on their list.
Yep. Check.
And conveniently having the TARDIS work to get from time point A to time point B to know or do that thing.
Yeah. For an episode set largely in Heathrow, it's kind of weird that they don't bring up the whole sort of season arc with Tegan trying to get back to Heathrow a bit more. Like it's you sort of just have to headcanon it yourself, right? And then there's the one scene at the end where she sees a plane take off, and this is like, you miss it, don't you? And you're like, oh, really, really, Sherlock? You think like that's her entire character is that she missed?
Yeah, I think there was some there. I would have liked to see a little more depth to it, certainly. But I did like that they finally get her back to Heathrow, and it's in midair, and she's the one begging them to not to go, right? Because we could be in serious trouble here. And then she's kind of like Tegan, who's usually like the fish out of water in all her episodes because she's the Earthling who's naive and doesn't know anything. She's completely in her element here. Like she knows the airport, she knows these pilot types. And she actually gets to be a stewardess at the end, which was great. I really actually like that bit where Stapley's like, "What? You're a stewardess? Get the passengers on board." She's like, "Oh," kind of almost occurs to her, "Yeah, I can do that."
Which does beg the question of where is the stewardess who we've already met? Like, why isn't she doing that job? I've seen some suggestion that the master actually kept her aboard his TARDIS to like serve him in-flight snacks. Something like that, but yeah,
she was also not the only stewardess amongst all the people.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess you could headcanon it that like now they have she was on the rear door.
Yeah. I love, but this is definitely one of those run out of money things, like that they have no indication of how they're getting the people on board the Concorde,
right?
It just like,
whether it's a rope ladder or
she's sort of like directing them this way, like, yes, go off screen, go away from these Concorde wheels.
Or as importantly as anything else, she's never actually done the job.
Exactly. That's the other thing. Like, we don't
Yeah.
even we're sort of led to assume that it's a year after she was supposed to get to Heathrow.
Yeah, she's gone through the training, obviously, so she's not going to be completely green, but she's also going to be out of practice at best.
And don't we find out that she got fired because she was
Yes.
late later on? Yeah, when she does that.
In Arc of Infinity, yeah.
Got the sack. But since we're talking about it, why don't we talk about that leaving scene? I guess it's like her first leaving scene. Obviously, was never intended to be. Well, I don't know if it was obviously, but I guess it was never intended to be permanent. I felt the scene was just sad and kind of a weird choice because you think about, wait a minute, is the Doctor just consciously abandoning her? Like,
Yep.
he doesn't even want to say goodbye, and it feels like this weird choice that, like, it's Nyssa who gets the hint from Tegan that she might want to stay. The Doctor never sees that, and he just kind of like goes in the TARDIS. And if there's any thought here at all, it just seems like, oh, we've been trying for weeks at least to get you back to Heathrow. We finally back at Heathrow, like pretty close to your time zone. This is where you wanted to go, right? Okay, we're done. See ya.
I mean, I kind of like the idea of the Doctor as just sort of being, having space ADHD. Like, he gets back to Heathrow. He's like, there was an important reason we were going to Heathrow. What was it? Oh, newspapers. Gotta go check the cricket scores. It's a bit weird. Yeah, has the Doctor ever abandoned a companion like that?
Well, to your point, I think there would have been a good moment there to acknowledge that in the first episode, right? Like that the history, it wouldn't even have to take long. Tegan, we finally got you home. Like, if you said that, and it could have been taken as like a joke or not, but then in the last scene they sort of like, sort of follow through with it. That would have made this scene work much better, I think. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I just found, I just think it's like, what a dick.
Basically, he's covering up his Adric grief by complaining about the state of English cricket. He's, not even paying attention to Tegan, runs off without her. I mean, that's companion abandonment. So weird. By the way, is there ever any in-show reason for why 5 is so into cricket?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think
it's just, he is because he is. I don't think there's a backstory there as such.
Yeah, because he wants to go. He thinks he's going to the Great Exhibition of 1851, and he's got like all these names of English cricketers that he wants to meet, and then it was apparently a Davison ad lib where he says at the end that the master was knocked for 6 into the pavilion, right? Something like that. I think the original line in scripted was a croquet reference, so it wasn't a cricket reference because this was originally a potential fourth Doctor script, right? It was. Yeah. It could have been the fourth Doctor swan song. It could have been Legopolis.
I think so. On the in-show explanation for his cricket loving, all I remember in Castrovalva is at some point he sees like a bat, I think, in the TARDIS. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I think there's a point where it's like he's freshly regenerated, and it seems like this bat leaves a big impression on him. And he starts talking about like almost seeing the cricket match he's played if he were to be using it. So maybe it's in sort of that post-regeneration mode that he gets it, but I think he's actually already got the jumper and stuff on at that point. So it's a little the outfit that he took to. It's kind of like fish sticks and custard, I think, for the Fifth Doctor. It's like boom.
I mean, RTD has talked about this notion that the Doctor imprints on like the first thing he sees. So yeah, maybe seeing the bat in Castrovalva is what does it, and suddenly he's all about cricket. I mean, obviously, the behind-the-scenes reason is JNT suggested they were having a lot of back and forth about the costume. Actually, we just learned more about this in an unpublished interview with the costume designer. And JNT was like, cricket umpire, let's make him look like that. And it wasn't quite that, but like that was the starting point.
Well, I'm glad they went with that instead of I guess the original design, which was in that same Doctor Who magazine article,
Yeah.
where I guess he was going to wear like camouflage pants, and it
Yes.
would have been a little bit more sort of
With
young
basketball
military
shoes.
adventure. Yeah, yeah.
Camo pants and basketball shoes. Can you imagine Peter Davison in that? And like, oh my God. Talk
Yeah, well,
about
for all we might knock JNT about some of his decisions, I think that was the right call to go like, no, man, we're not making Doogie Howser here. Like, let's let's go for something else. And like Cricketer, I think it's fine. I think like Davison's ad lib. I didn't realize that was an ad lib.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
But I like I knew nothing about cricket growing up, like, but I got it. I got that he was into this thing, and I liked him being into this thing. I think it gave the character a little more texture in whatever he was sort of doing. So
Yeah. I was sort of
yeah.
surprised to discover that the reason wasn't JNT saying we're going to sell this to Australia, we're going to sell it to New Zealand, we're going to sell it to the West Indies, we're going to sell it to India, Pakistan. Like he's had some grand ambition for like how he was going to promote it via cricket, which would be a very, very JNT thing to do. Speaking of very JNT things, we should definitely give him props for getting Concorde.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool.
The first TV show, I believe, to use Concorde as a setting. And he did it apparently by using a bluff, which was telling British Airways that Air France were on board, and he was going to do it with them if they didn't.
Oh wow!
If they didn't give him a Concorde.
JNT,
right?
Oh man, he likes to bluff, that guy.
He does, and also, like I read somewhere that Grimwade was like on board with including Concorde because he thought he might get a flight on it.
Well, that sounds like a JNT reason, honestly. Just like, oh, let's see if we can do this, and maybe we could get a ride to New York or something.
What do we think? Can we talk about the TARDIS in the cargo hold of Concorde, because it's on its side, which first of all, surely you could materialize the cargo hold got to be large enough that you could materialize it the right way up.
Is it though?
Is it? I know. Concorde fans, write in. Let us know if you could fit a TARDIS right way up in the Concorde. But also, like, it necessitates a lot of this sort of climbing out, and then you're being on the floor of the TARDIS, but they don't do it consistently, and that's sort of a weird thing. I mean, it happens again in a few episodes, right? The 11th Hour's got some of this. When else does it happen? When else is the TARDIS on its side?
They reference it. Castrovalva.
Castrovalva, yeah. You're right.
But I like that bit because I really like the humor, and I think that some of the humor in this works really well. Where he goes like, "This is bigger, this is smaller on the inside." Like that was a pretty funny line. And just the whole bit where he straightens it out. He's just kind of like, "Oh, so useful when you want to maintain a dignified presence or something." I don't know. I thought it worked, but the Concorde stuff itself, I think it works well when they're at Heathrow. And then, when they're in the Jurassic period, it's just really stretching the imagination. I guess you have to believe they're on this Mesa or something where you could actually have a runway. But then, of course, you just never get to see anything other than that one wheel. It's just like kind of sitting there.
You do see the model from a distance, right?
Yes.
And is that so there's a point where, and I cannot understand the script reason for this, but the Master's TARDIS turns into Concorde.
Yeah.
Materialized around the other Concorde. I mean, is that just a Legopolis reference, or what's going on?
I don't know what's going on there. Why did he want a plane in his TARDIS?
Yeah.
Chris B, you have any theories?
None. No.
Well, is it also the largest thing that a TARDIS has ever been?
Good question. Not counting books.
Yeah, because the Monster seems to favor the small design of TARDIS, where the door is hidden around the back and you don't know how he actually gets into a grandfather clock.
Well, given they were trying to salvage parts from one Concorde to get the other up and running, maybe the Master materialized around it just to prevent them from doing so.
Or then he loses bits of his TARDIS again. It could have been an even more comic moment of like, no, you're taking the wheels off my. You're letting the air out of the tires on my TARDIS.
Also, I'm assuming there's some sort of like protective barrier, shield, something to stop that kind of
Yes.
thing.
One would assume. Certainly doesn't have a perception filter around it.
I gotta say, there is this weird parallel thing between parts of airplanes they're cannibalizing and then parts of TARDISes that they're cannibalizing and exchanging in episode 4. It doesn't quite add up to a theme or anything, but it is this weird kind of moment in the script where there's a lot of parts that are discussed and a lot of repairs. And it leads to this sort of what is a seemingly the climax, the showdown between not just the Doctor and the Master, but the temporal limiter and the quantum accelerator.
Yes.
So it's like,
which
okay.
would you rather have?
Well, the quantum accelerator. Oh no, wait. The temporal limiter is the one that has that red bit. So it's, it kind of looks a little more interesting.
Temporal limiter is also the one that was sabotaged.
Right. Right. Is that the one that makes it so that the Master arrives at Heathrow
after?
Yeah. Master falls for it, man. The thing is, you'd think after he got the wrong components out of the console, he'd be a little more careful after that.
I'm so confused, and I think part of the reason is that they did introduce the Concorde crew sabotaging the TARDIS scene as padding because the episode was too short. So because it just totally doesn't make sense, because the Doctor at one point is looking in Khalid's crystal ball area for bits of his TARDIS, but he doesn't yet know that his own TARDIS has been sabotaged at that point. So it's just like stuff is just not making sense. I've often said on the show, like, best way to treat Doctor Who is imagine it as a fever dream, and a lot of this certainly qualifies.
Yeah, you can headcanon some of that. This episode definitely requires excessive headcanon to make any kind of sense, but you could say some of the component, like certainly the TARDIS is telepathic, right? And the third Doctor has even mentioned the telepathic circuit. So I think what that is that the Master has put those components into that crystal thing so that he can get the Khalid plasmaton focusing thing to work. So I actually really like the foreshadowing of that console making TARDIS noises, because there's little bits where there's two moments where it makes that sort of TARDIS alert noise that we've heard, and if you're a fan, your ears perk up and you kind of like, oh, what's with that? And it's kind of like what I was saying, I think in a previous week. I think it might have been when we were doing Fury from the Deep, like when they had that Motorola Crazer in Lost. And you notice it, but you're like, oh, maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe they're just, didn't put the right phone in, or they just went to, in this case, the catalog of special effects noises and just use that thing. And it wasn't deliberate, but clearly it was, to sort of really kind of foreshadow that reveal. Very smart.
Yeah. I do. I hadn't noticed that. So good spot. But yeah, I think instead of a temporal limiter, we needed a verbal limiter on the technobabble here. I mean, my goodness, has the technobabble ever been worse than this in terms of like Grimwade? Like he clearly wants to sound smart. But as we see in the sort of the mixing up of the ancient Earth eras, like it's not actually teaching us anything here. It just sounds like maybe it should be. There's a lot of obfuscation going on. Did that stop you guys at all?
No.
No.
No. I mean, it's a sci-fi show. I'm going to expect technobabble.
I mean, normally, yeah, me too. Like but it just sort of usually fades to background noise, But this was like so front and center. Like it seemed like they were talking about a different TARDIS component every 5 minutes.
True.
Yeah, and this is definitely a thing. Like I've said before, the Davison era, and I kind of like I gotta say I do like the technobabble, and I do like the opportunity here for the Master to get outsmarted by the Doctor using this stuff. But ultimately, like, it, I think, reduces the TARDIS in a way, and this has always been the thing I've criticized, to this just this thing you can pull one thing out of and then suddenly it doesn't work, which honestly makes some sense. I mean, you think time travel would be complicated enough that everything's got to be working properly, and if you screw it up even a little bit, like, that's probably a bad idea. Yes, as one of our commenters once said. But
Yeah.
it just story wise, it just provides too easy an out for any episode, right? Because then you just sort of think, well, why wouldn't they just wreck this one thing in this one time like they did this other time? And then it sort of reduces the TARDIS role to sort of this mere device. Well, and I do prefer sort of the view of the TARDIS where it's more alive, where it is more like it has its own personality. It's not a full-on character unless you're talking about the Doctor's wife, but it is a there's it has more of an intent within the show's context. I definitely prefer that view.
So speaking of the TARDIS, I mean, I do, I'm trying to find things I loved about this. I did like the moment where the Concorde crew come in and they're trying to fly the thing. And there are two bits I love. First of all, they're trying to look for the door closing thing. And it is, I am correct in thinking it is actually that big red lever, right? That they're like, oh no, can't be that. It's big and red. Like, don't touch that.
I would have thought it was something else. Was the line?
Yeah. Like, that must be auto destruct.
Well, it also hits. This is not going to go well for these guys.
Yeah, but I also love that the captain takes off his jacket. Like, that's when I'm like, getting down to business, takes off his jacket, providing a reason, I think, for the first time for the hat stand, the coat stand to be there.
That's good.
I mean, Tom Baker uses it all the time for his coat and scarf and hat.
That is true. And there's the scarf reference, which, by the way, another Peter Davison ad-lib. When he's cold and they're in the edge of the Pleistocene, he's like, times like this I wish I had my scarf. Not in the original script, so good for him for throwing in some continuity there.
Yeah, man, continuity is all over this episode.
Yeah,
like they're referencing obviously Earthshock, like Castrovalva, Tegan's whole arc. Again, this is a whole thing with the Davison era. You definitely get the sense that the stories are closer together, like the density of sort of experience here in this area is sort of
there's a more of a serialized nature to his first season than often happens. Yeah, and don't forget the pteroleptil. And the Melter.
Yeah. Oh, and the Master would never have encountered it because the pteroleptil was from the Visitation.
Right.
But the Master would have known of Adric, and it makes sense that he gives them a fake Adric with the mathematics badge still on.
Right.
Master clearly not a fan of continuity.
But it was the Xeraphin that were doing the projections.
Oh yeah, okay. By the way, Xeraphin, I keep wanting to say Seraphim with an M, and I also keep wanting to say Plasmatron, like it's a name of a television. Has there ever been naming where you just like get it so wrong? Like so close to something else. It's interesting.
Plasmatron. That sounds like one of the Transformers. It's giving Megatron and Galvatron a run for the Decepticon leadership. We should talk about the Xeraphin. The Xeraphin. Okay, so definitely a much better idea than they are in execution, but I think the idea is kind of cool. Like this race that sort of gets destroyed in some war, but they're highly advanced telepathically, so they end up turning themselves into a Gestalt creature to survive. That's kind of a neat backstory. I like it, and it sort of sets a pretty good stage for the story. It again, it runs out of so much steam and budget in episodes 3 and 4. You only get the hints of that when the two Xeraphin projections are arguing, and then it just kind of goes away, unfortunately. I think with a more fleshed out story there and having more for that aspect to be present in episode 4 and the central sort of moral argument, I guess, between the two halves, this could have made it They could have actually salvaged the whole thing, but they never do anything with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unless I missed something at the end, so the Xeraphin get transferred into the Master's TARDIS as basically the propulsion system.
Ah.
But it's never really said what happens to them at the end. Are they still in there? Are
Right.
they like to this day? Are they still in there? And it's not really discussed what happens to them.
Thank you for explaining that, Chris. I totally missed that. But I do have so many questions about the Xeraphin. So many questions. First of all, like, why, if they could speak to the Doctor in that double FaceTime thing, like, why try to communicate through Nyssa first? I didn't really fully get that part. Secondly, there
Are you
was
talking when they were out in the field kind of thing?
no, just before Professor Hater dies, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they had to consume Hater to do that, right? Because they can't do it until he's gone. So there was he was some kind of catalyst for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, some sort of bridge, perhaps.
Right, but Nyssa wasn't. I don't.
She wasn't. They needed more, and that's what Hater provided. I don't know.
They needed more hate. More hate to power the Xeraphin engine. I also, so there were apparently supposed to be more Xeraphin. Grimwade had the idea that there would more come on screen, and I do love that idea of it's kind of a cool special effect where one of them splits into two, as sort of like the overlay CSO, whatever the hell it is, special effect goes. 1 into 2 is kind of cool. 2 into 4 would be even better. I just like the idea of them still dividing. But also, are their names arranged alphabetically by how good they are? Because the evil Xeraphin, his name starts with a Z, and the good one starts with an A. So, Antonin or something. I can't even remember.
The Zarak. I remember Zarak.
Yes.
I always remember the hard Ks.
The production notes mention that they're meant to be representative of the ego and the id. So you've got the good, and then you've got the instinct, and just there to counterbalance. So
so
it's probably just coincidence that they're named how they're named.
Huh?
It's like the light and dark side of the Force.
Yeah.
All happened in there.
Yeah, or the Ashland side and the Bogan side, as George Lucas originally called them. Deep cut Star Wars reference. But also that maybe that's a reference to Forbidden Planet as well. I don't know if you've seen that. The id monster in that is sort of this spectral creature. So maybe that's what Grimwade was thinking of.
Well, and apparently later we learn that the Xeraphin and Xeraphas, their planet, are sort of perpetually invaded, I guess, because there was some other. They were in the crossfire of some war,
right? And
then apparently the Master gets chameleon from Xeraphas, which was, and he says it was like a product of a previous invader of that planet.
Chameleon. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that we get so much Xeraphas and Xeraphin backstory, yet their actual presence in the story is almost non-existent.
I do not want to watch King's Demons to be reminded of how that happens, but you're right. Yeah.
Well, we did.
We've been there.
I was just going to say, not only have we seen all the Chameleon episodes on Pull to Open,
well, there's even a Xeraphas reference in Planet of Fire. When they finally
Peter Grimwade wrote the both, so that makes sense.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense because they flip over the Master's control box, which has the shrunken Master in there, and he talks about how I've been connected to Chameleon ever since I first retrieved him on Xeraphas. It's just unreal how this race that's barely in the episode, and not exactly one of Doctor Who's marquee planets is just everywhere.
They did this so much in the 80s, call back to things that 3 people will remember.
Maybe that's the Ian Levine influence. He was big on that when he was consulting for the show.
Interesting. Yeah.
So guys, I got to pull at one of these plot holes that I think I don't get it. Maybe I just missed it or it went over my head. Okay, so Nyssa is the first one to detect that he throws an illusion at the end of episode 1 by seeing decaying corpses, and then that gets the Doctor to get them to pull them out of the illusion, and then we never hear about the corpses again. I mean, I think there's one line where she asks like, well, what were those things I saw? Because he mentions a brontosaurus. And he's like, I doubt it. But then it's like, but what was the deal with the corpses? Like, what were they? Where were they? Where are they? Like, how come we never see them again? What's going on here?
Well, great question. And who are they? Where did they come from? Sort of thing as well. Because obviously humans didn't exist.
Yeah.
Neanderthals, proto-humans, whatever, didn't exist at that point in time.
Yeah.
So
And
you have to assume that they came from the first Concorde.
Maybe.
Right.
They wouldn't have come from the second.
Yeah.
The state of decomposition was pretty advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, episode 3, and because you shared your notes, Pete, I dug into this a little bit. So episode 3, when Hader gets absorbed by the Xeraphin, you see his corpse.
Yes,
and he looks about the same.
Too.
So the default logical assumption is these are going to be people from the first Concorde, passengers, crew, whoever, that were absorbed somehow by, I don't know if it's plasmatons, because it's not going to be the Xeraphin because they're not in play yet, but maybe plasmatons, and their corpses are just sitting there.
Huh. Maybe they resisted. Maybe they were resisting Khalid.
I did like that Hater decomposition scene. He's like, he's Hater, and then he goes all yellow, and then there's a skeleton with a bit of foam on it. But what I like about it is Janet Fielding really sells it by like looking like she's about to throw up. Like she puts her hand over her mouth and turns away, and I'm like, that's a really effective kind of Doctor Who companion thing to do when there's like not enough money to show the full special effect. Just show the reaction of her, like, oh my god, I can't watch this. It's pretty good. Whereas Nissa's just sort of staring impassively, like she can totally handle it.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, Trakens are humanoid. Has she never seen a Traken corpse, like to kind of understand what they are?
Well, it's such a clean society. It's the perfect society on Traken. That's the thing about Nissa, where she seems like, this is in my headcanon why she isn't hell-bent for revenge on the Master for destroying, not just killing her father and stealing his body, but also destroying her entire civilization, and that she really is like a lawful good cleric, like she's basically like, and this is honestly very much in part of Sarah Sutton's whole performance, I think, throughout. Like she plays Nissa almost always very even keel. It's not like she's never emotional, but she's the rational one, especially in that first scene where they're talking about Adric. I thought that was very well played and really showed how each of them is really getting their characters. And because you have Tegan, and she's just really grieving openly. She's shouting. She's just begging the Doctor to go back. Whereas Nissa's just like, surely the TARDIS is quite capable, trying to reason him into it. I thought that really, really worked.
I love Tegan's line, "Oh, we argued all the time. I'm going to miss him."
Yeah, that was a super great line, and that was Janet Fielding. The original line in the script, I think, was something more complicated, like much more wordy, and she reworded it to that beautiful, simple line. So, good on you, Janet. Can't wait to see you again on the show.
I also like how later, because we've done this episode before, Mondred Undead, where she shows Turlo into Adric's old room, and Turlo's kind of a dick about it. I think it basically goes like, okay, I'm going to clear all this stuff out. And she doesn't like defend it at all. She's clearly sad for, she's just kind of like, it's her room, do what you like. But she's clearly affecting her in some way.
Mondred Undead, another Peter Grimway joint.
Indeed.
He's all over the place, that guy.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of his stuff. Given that we've seen Planet of Fire, and did he also do King's Demons? I can't remember.
Terrence Dudley directed and wrote that, and somebody else directed.
Yeah, I didn't know until this, by the way, that Grimway directed Earthshock. And wow, what a
Full Circle, Logopolis as well.
Yeah, that's right. The reason that he couldn't write what became Logopolis, like he couldn't write what became Time Flight for that season, was because he was directing Full Circle. Like that's the only reason that he couldn't deliver the script in time for it to be the fourth Doctor finale. So Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
well,
we
I
have.
like a lot of his stuff. I gotta say,
Mm.
this isn't probably not the one I is my favorite or anything, but it sounds like this could have been much better
Hmm.
had they stuck closer to what sort of he originally did, or had some again more money to realize the ambition of what he was trying to do with various things.
I'd love to see the Fourth Doctor fall from the Concorde instead of from a radio tower. That would have been interesting. Much probably a far further fall. Doctor Who magazine actually also did this recently, where they did sort of comparing the distances that the Doctor has fallen in various episodes. It seems the longest is Jodie Whittaker. The stuff, the woman who fell to Earth. Like, you can't beat that.
Was that more than the end of time?
Oh yeah, it definitely was, because he kind of jumps off not too far from the roof there, I think. But what about
falls
Matt?
From the spaceship. So.
Yeah, but it does. He could actually see the building, I think, when he jumps off. But then there's, I think, Women Who Fell to Earth. But there's also what's the Matt Smith one where he jumps down in the spacesuit and it's on backwards? The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. That's
interesting one.
I forget if that was.
I don't think they compare that. They did throw in Heaven Sent with him jumping from the top of the tower in the confession dial. So that was interesting. But yeah. So that should have been the finale, like something to do with Concorde, right? It should have been the finale of the Fourth Doctor. But also that reminds me that the second location that they chose in Heathrow was like the roof of a car park.
See, I didn't mind that. I mean, I like it when shows are real. Like, if the rest of the production looked good, I would have liked it more, because I wouldn't want them to dress up everyday things, right? Like, I like that the gate, when they materialize, isn't just an airplane gate and they're on the roof of a car park. And if again, I think it would work better if they were. That was sort of in contrast to sort of the fantastical other things going on. But like, let the airport be the airport. You don't have to dress it up. It's like, it's kind of cool to have the Doctor walking around contemporary places that just are unremarkable, just because they keep doing remarkable stuff. So there are two moments I want to highlight that I think work really well. One is, there's a bit where Stapley, who has just been freed
Captain
from the
Concorde
Captain Stapley. Yeah. And he's basically trying to get Bilton, who's like the three guys, the three blokes who are the flight crew in the second of the second Concorde. By the way, I thought the guest cast generally was great, and all three of these guys are likable. They're very believable as these pilots. But there's Bilton is like part of the crew who's like chipping away at the Xeraphin chamber. And he goes, like, he's trying to get him out of it, and he's like, do you remember, like, everybody, we already got freed from this hypnosis. Do you remember the Doctor and Tegan? And he's like, oh yeah, Tegan. Like, you remember her, right? It's kind of like this, which I thought was it's a good moment. Yeah, it's like, you remember the hot one. Like, come on, dude. Like, it's like, with its human sexuality still exists here in the Doctor Who universe,
right?
Even though it's rarely acknowledged in the classic series.
In classic Who, maybe it's just a thing for people in flight attendant uniform. Like, that's why he might remember.
Stereotype, but why not?
Being around them all the time, that would be understandable.
Yeah,
and of course, Nyssa, I think, is still meant to be, let's say, underage to some degree. So
right.
She might not be the appropriate one.
Yeah, she's very buttoned up at this stage. We have been to Terminus, where she is no longer very buttoned up. But yes,
made a woman out of her.
They certainly did. They certainly did. Yeah, I like that team of Stapley and Scobie and Bilton. They're kind of a good kind of. It feels almost 60s, that way that they sort of hang together and like become good foils for the Doctor, and like, useful, righto chaps, let's go do this thing, and I've got an idea, let's follow me, I'm going to take my jacket, all of that stuff had a very kind of cheery chappy 60s vibe to me.
Yeah, and they kind of have stuff to do. To your point
Mm.
about the TARDIS and the swapping of the components, like they're not just kind of 100% just along for the ride,
Mm.
so to speak. I also like at the end
Yes.
where they're giving that whole rundown to the airport controller, and he's just W2ETF. Like, what are you telling me? And they're already fully in Doctor Who universe now. Like they're basically like, oh, all you have to do is dig up Victor Foxtrot. It's beyond the fuel depot, I think, and went through a time contour. They're just, it's just
Yeah.
like,
I'm
you
kind of
guys too.
I'm kind of on the official side there. And you think of the cost of a Concorde, and you're just like,
Yeah.
sorry, we lost a whole Concorde in prehistoric Earth. Smirk. What the
Oh, we were
hell?
supposed to bring that back? No.
Oh, it's already back. It just came around the long way.
There you go.
Earlier on, Pete, you'd mentioned tropes of the Fifth Doctor era, including technobabble. Another one is anybody and everybody going into the TARDIS.
Yeah,
And so we get that here as well with Stapley et al. So there,
totally.
it's nice to see that continuing. 'Cause
Yeah.
we had that last. Well, we had that in Earthshock. Obviously, we had that in Black Orchid two stories prior as well. So.
Yeah, I always like that line in Earthshock. I forget the commander's name, but he goes, so, bigger than you think. It's like, it is indeed. So the other moment I wanted to highlight was also in episode 4, involves the crew, because basically the Doctor is admonishing Nyssa that he's just learned that the TARDIS components were swapped. And he's really coming down on her hard, like, you know what it would be like if I tried to take off with those two things swapped. Then Stapley comes in. He's like, yeah, so I got to take the blame for this, Doctor. It was totally me. And he's like, well, it was a genius move.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had that note as well.
It was like, okay. And I kind of wanted them to cut back to this. I going like, just gape mouth.
What the? Yes.
Kick him in the shin, something. I had that under the misogyny umbrella as well.
Yes. Oh, a man taking credit for my idea. What a surprise. Yes.
At least here, I think it's like kind of ironic, right? Like it's not like we're meant to be like rolling our eyes at that. But yeah, take your point. It's probably hasn't aged that well.
No, and not only that. I mean, I could understand it if he was doing that to Tegan, especially with her moving the TARDIS in like Fort of Doomsday, for example. But I couldn't. Not Nyssa. Nyssa knows what she's doing,
and she's the best of all of us.
Yeah, and that I don't know, it just doesn't sit well.
Yeah, it's interesting that this is so. Is this the first like all female double TARDIS companion episode? Because it's interesting that we're seeing this like again right before Power of the Doctor, which has got Kate Lethbridge Stewart, it's got Tegan and Ace, and Yaz and the Doctor. It's like this all female. Gosh, I keep forgetting Dan. As a Liverpudlian, I should be ashamed of myself for forgetting Dan. But like, it's definitely a very female companion heavy episode that we're about to see.
But I think to your point, I didn't occur to me until now. Yeah, I think that up until this episode, the Doctor's never had two female companions, and no male. Like makes 100%.
Yeah,
female rather. He's had two, obviously, at the very beginning with Barbara and Susan, but there was Ian and the Doctor. So, but with just female companions and two of them,
He's had solo female companions, Liz and Joe and Sarah, but
yes, but which it makes it even more criminal that they're kind of really underused and like passed out for half of the story.
Yeah,
at least they do their own thing, because he was telling them to go back to the TARDIS as soon as like Nyssa was out of the plasmaton barrier, but then she was like, nah, we gotta go to the Citadel and do stuff. Admittedly, she was compelled by the telepathic presence there, but at the same time it's like, oh, that's cool. I like that they're doing their own thing instead of just sort of blindly, oh, we're gonna go back to safety,
just not through her own volition. But yes,
So one more thing I just wanted to make sure we cover before we get to the questions is that is this kind of an everybody lives episode? Like, apart from Hater, who clearly dies, and apart, I guess, from we have to infer, to your point, Chris, that those corpses were some of the passengers who were, I guess, destroyed by plasmatons, but that's never really confirmed. But other than that, so that we'll just write that off because they're nameless, faceless people we never met. There's, like, everybody kind of lives, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, even Hater, like, it's ambiguous. I think
Well,
you can't kill the Hater.
He was just a Xeraphin projection, so he's dead. He's dead.
Right.
You say Xeraphin projection, I say there's some other reason. He's still alive. He's out there. He's found a TARDIS of his own.
Maybe he's like the puddle in the pilot.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the super being now that the Xeraphin have enhanced him. But nobody dies, and it's silly that nobody dies again because the Master doesn't kill anybody. Like, one, it would have been cool to see him kill people with the tissue compression eliminator, but it's like, why does he leave everyone alive and in control of his, like, control room when he goes in the TARDIS for the first time? Like, he just kind of like, okay, I'll forget about everyone. And then,
well, they were under hypnosis, so I think it's safe for them to be roaming his TARDIS. But
oh no, I meant like when he's unmasked as Khalid, he pulls out the tissue compression eliminator and he's threatening everybody, and then he gets the Doctor's TARDIS key. Like, why not just kill everybody? Just go in the TARDIS. Like, and then there's Stapley and Bilton who are in the TARDIS, and he catches them, and he's delighting, I guess, in putting them in effectively a death trap of, like, having this TARDIS just floating above the Citadel forever. And fair enough, not that smart as it turned out. And then at the end, it's like he gives into this bargain with the Doctor when he could just kind of go like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to give you any components. I'm just going to start murdering passengers until you give me what I want. How do you like that?
That would be a very dark thing, but that would be in line with his personality.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're discounting the Xeraphin who were compressed.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's like no one dies that we care about other than Hater.
Yeah, it is weird because the Doctor does have that line of like, something like, I do it, Captain. The Master will kill you without a second thought. Like, he will do it.
Right.
Will he?
He doesn't do it. Dude,
he really doesn't look like he's gonna actually do it. He looks like he's just having too much fun being a pantomime villain.
Yeah.
Oh no, he isn't.
Oh yes, he is. Thank you. It takes me right back. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is definitely one that it's I don't know if I love to hate it, but
let's save it for the rating, which is coming up. Right now, we're going to flip to what everyone's been waiting for, the 4 questions to Doomsday.
Pause for audio sting.
It's huge. Okay, question 1. Why did the randomizer take us here? Well, we kind of already said this, but is there another reason, perhaps? Other than that, it just listened to me.
It listened to
take
you.
Us to time flight after Rosa.
It also, Pete, it listened to me.
Ooh.
Because what I said last time was, don't take us. You said take us to a Victoria episode. I said take us to a Victorian episode that mentions something Victorian. And what do we get? A mention of the Great Exhibition of 1851.
Oh,
possibly the most Victorian thing ever. Two Victorian cricketers are mentioned. The Talons of Wenchang's style racism appears. Khalid.
Let's not do that.
But there also, there are definitely Fury from the Deep connections. There's the foam. The plasmatons are foaming it up at some point.
Maybe that's what the weed was. It was like remnant plasmaton stuff that was dug up by the North Sea drilling.
Hey,
it affected the weed.
Look at you, randomizer.
Headcanon, not maximum.
But it's like the randomizer is becoming sentient because it's creating its own headcanon now. I think you're absolutely right. And weird TARDIS stuff, Chris. This is kind of a tradition in Pull to Open that I long ago told the randomizer that I like episodes where weird things happen to the TARDIS. We had that with Fury in the Deep when it's floating on the North Sea. And this is definitely a weird TARDIS episode for sure in so many ways. We've already covered. But also, like, the Tegan and the Master connection with Power of the Doctor coming up. That's super interesting. And I think the contrast with Fury from the Deep is, like, we were saying during that episode that like it didn't age well because no one's interested in North Sea gas now. But like in the 60s, it was a really exciting thing. Concorde, though, still seems futuristic and exciting. So, maybe it's kind of refuting the point that I made there, that yes, maybe Doctor Who should go after contemporary things sometimes, because, certainly in the case of Concorde, you're preserving something that's super futuristic more so than the future.
So you're saying it's time to remake Time Flight, but with like Hyperloop?
I would.
That'd be cool.
I would take more Concordes over another Time Flight, but sure. Yeah, let's do that too.
Yeah, that's the last Concorde flight was something like 10 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
12 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, you guys keep talking. I'll look it up.
But they've talked about resurrecting it. So, like a few years ago. I don't think it ever got off the ground, but it was like, what someone who was flush with Silicon Valley money, I think, wanted to do it.
And then Doctor Who can do, Return of the Concorde. Yes. Last flight retired 2003.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Much further back than I remember. Yeah, I actually know someone from Edmonton who took one of the last flights. Which were only about 3,000 or so at the time, which I think was pretty typical. Maybe maybe some of the last flights had more demand, but just always wanted to do it and realized they had very little time left, and flew to New York just so they could fly to London and back. Concorde. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's that does remind me of like a super deep cut on Time Flight. In the novelization, it's mentioned that there's a pop star on board. And by the way, we have to give a shout out to the extras in Time Flight, like the Concorde passengers who are just like this is a great scene where the master's talking about killing him, and they turn to each other like, rhubarb. I don't think I like being killed. But yes, but it is said in the novelization that there's a pop star who is taking this Concorde and has been stranded in prehistoric Earth. And it has been pointed out that, roughly contemporaneous to 1982, which pop star was flying back and forth between London and the UK and New York, hoping for a big US career, Adam Ant. If you remember him. So, like, I love that headcanon.
To our shame.
Yeah, you guys over here just wouldn't accept him the way that we had. But yes, I love that idea that Adam Ant is actually on board and in the background of Time Flight somewhere.
Oh, nice. So ultimately, the randomizer took us here to do an Adam Ant revival, and possibly reboot Concorde. So thank you very much, randomizer.
Indeed.
All right, question 2. What if the evil plot had succeeded? So I'm sure Chris T is best equipped to answer this because you've got such a grip on the plot.
Yeah, my understanding, and feel free to jump in at any point, but my understanding is if the evil plot succeeded, that the Master is free and he has a working TARDIS. And since the evil plot didn't succeed, the Master is free and has a working TARDIS. So now, please jump in and tell me how wrong I am.
I think the idea is that the TARDIS is like supercharged. It's like not just a TARDIS anymore with the Xeraphin power in it. He also has this crazy super telepathic ability. Essentially, it turns his TARDIS into a weapon and is very well equipped to sort of build his own empire, whether it's the evil Xeraphin or just the slaves that he's got as part of the passengers. So he's got a pretty good sort of foundation for building an empire that could take on, even the Time Lords eventually. So maybe if that happens, then the Fifth Doctor, well, I guess he'd just be stranded in the Jurassic period, right? Like, what would he even do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Chris B, any thoughts on what would happen?
Doctor stranded in the Jurassic period. Let's see. He could befriend some dinosaurs that we don't even see.
Yeah. He could
That's
befriend that one bird that flew in front of the Concorde in that shot.
Well,
yeah.
it's always unclear when the Silurians are exactly from. Maybe they're around. Like,
That's possible. Yeah, he could start negotiations with them a little early. I mean, the Xeraphin described the planet as barren or uninhabited or something like that.
So maybe not.
Deserted, whatever the word they use is. So that's a little erroneous. But yeah, I'm going to go with that. So he finds a Silurian encampment and makes friends with them. And yeah. I don't know what he does with them, but...
We may have to look in the A history for this, but like how many other crashed spaceships are on Earth at this point?
Right. you got Scaroth somewhere.
Yeah.
There's the crashed Xeraphin ship for sure.
Yeah, I feel like he should just have a running list of like, in case I'm stranded here are the crashed spaceships I've already encountered.
It's all stored in the Sonic. He doesn't have it. Yeah.
Poor Sonic. Pull one out for the Sonic.
It's too early to go find Adric's corpse.
Yeah.
It's too early for the Fendal too. There's not a lot to choose from there in Jurassic Doctor Who universe world.
Yeah, it would just be like cut 3 years later, Peter Davison with a giant beard, like, his clothes are all torn, he's like wearing a grass skirt or something. He's just
that's just where like episode 6 of Hitchhikers comes into play.
Exactly. Yes, that was the reference I was making. Nice one. I love it.
All right. That's I like the thought of a Peter Davison in a very blonde beard in the Jurassic period wandering around, trying to figure out how to get his TARDIS working again. Maybe he would have some help, perhaps, from a Clara Splinter, but even if we don't have the evil plot succeeding, we need to figure out, where is she? This is a thing we do, because obviously Clara Oswald was splintered throughout the Doctor's timeline and the name of the Doctor, and we like to imagine her in all the classic series episodes, perhaps filling in some plot oversights as she goes along. So the best guess I had here was essentially she's someone in the cosmos selling top quality Halloween costumes. So wherever the master was before this, he just fell in love with that Khalid outfit because it's so, racist and bad, and he's bad. And it had the built-in snot dispenser, so he just couldn't resist. He was like, "This is it. This is my next disguise."
I would totally buy that for Halloween, personally. Yeah, you just sort of at the end, it's super deep cut, and then you could just sort of die at some point during the evening, and then you get out of your costume, and everyone would be like, "I don't understand," and you'd be like, "You never do." I don't get your deep cut references. You never do. I got nothing for this one, honestly. There are so many things for Clara to fill in here. I'm sort of trying to figure out a way where she can kind of like, we can use her to do something about this massive coincidence, the fact that the master is sucking in Concordes down this time corridor, and the Doctor just happens to be on board one. Is that coincidence? We don't even really know.
He got bumped by the temporal effect, right?
Yeah.
He just ran into it. He ran into the corridor.
Yeah, it just kind of keeps randomly running into the master like this. Yeah, I don't know how Clara can make that happen.
Well, she could be one of the other passengers, but I don't know what she would do, right? Like, what is she doing?
I would go with one of the passengers on the first Concorde. And she's going to sabotage the efforts of getting into the inner sanctum so that the Xeraphin can't be disturbed. But she fails.
Maybe she's the newspaper seller at Heathrow. who is like distracting the Doctor from his Adric grief by shouting about the latest cricket scores.
And maybe she's not even selling him that day's newspaper. She's saved a special one with really bad cricket news.
Apparently, this is like super deep cut. If there are any cricket fans out there, but like, and they didn't even know this when they filmed it, but England was doing particularly bad at the time this was aired. So, yeah, Canada never got into cricket, did it? It's like every other part of the Commonwealth is super into cricket, but not you guys.
I remember being forced to play it at least once in elementary school. Like we did have like very basic crickety stuff, like these rubber bats, and I think all we did was just do like softball with them though. Anyway,
yeah, definitely a weird choice for a sport for Doctor Who's international fans, but there you go.
Yeah, I think in Canada we already had our sticks and balls game or pucks game, and we're just like we don't have room for another one. We also did curling, so
yeah. A little hard to have cricket pitches that are not as snow covered occasionally as Heathrow was in this episode. Snow would definitely stop play a lot. But,
All right, last question on the 4 questions to Doomsday. It is our rating system. Is this a Dalek, which means it is good? Is it an Ogron, which means it is perhaps not so good? Or is it a Viscount banger, our rating that we reserve for the best episodes ever?
Well, I would actually like to propose that we add an extra item to the rating system here, because as Pull to Open listeners may remember, we introduced Viscount Banger in State of Decay. This is the name of Lala Ward's father. That is her aristocratic connection. He's Viscount Banger. We loved it so much that it now, it's one of the best ever. So I propose that we introduce a new rating and we call it the Professor Hater.
Okay.
Because I think it's not quite like this is so bad it's good. It's not kind of that thing. I think, to my mind, this is sort of bad in a way that is very instructive. It shows you lots of things that Doctor Who shouldn't be. It's still sort of fun and entertaining along the way. Maybe teaches you a few things. I don't know. You certainly learn about Concorde, and it's kind of, impressive in that way. So yeah, I'm going to rate this a Professor Hater.
Okay, so let me. It's so bad, it's instructive.
Yeah, it's so bad, but you still kind of want to watch it. And it's not because it's so bad it's good, but it's so bad, but it's like a classic Doctor Who kind of misstep in a lot of ways.
It's bad, but you learned a lot.
Yeah,
that's fair. I got you. I was just going to say this looks like a Dalek from a distance. Okay, I think it does, because it's like I've said, it starts off really, really well. There are great, memorable moments, but you get close to that Dalek, you pop it open. Oh, it's just an Ogron messing around. It's like, okay. So I do think it is underrated, though. I think it is sort of rightly or wrongly remembered for its weaknesses, but I would say if they it's very clear, and I think this is why, from your rating, I think I've learned what they did wrong. So I think it's a good rating, the Professor Hater, in that I think if they had a larger budget, obviously, but also paid more attention to that Master Khalid thing and why that was even going on, and just fleshing out the Xeraphin more, this could have been a good episode. Like if they followed through on all of that, it's just great ideas. They already had good performances, but the script just didn't live up to the ambition of the story.
Yeah.
Chris B, what say you?
I've been a Doctor Who fan long enough that I can happily ignore received fan wisdom. I can look beyond the surface of things. I can be a proponent of some of the lesser liked stories. Fear Her, for example. I'm a massive fan of Underworld. Massive fan of Underworld. This one, I think I enjoyed watching this more this time around than I ever have in the past. I think it's definitely underrated. In the Mighty 200 poll from Doctor Who magazine in 2009 or whatever it was, this came in 196 out of 200.
Yeah.
I don't know that it didn't deserve that, but the production, like the faults with the story are mostly skin deep, much like Underworld, like all the CSO and the just the fact that inflation was rampant. They just didn't have the money to do anything. If they had more money, if they had invested a little more in backstory and script development and things like that, whether there was a time thing, I don't know. Yeah, this could have definitely been better. So it's still an Ogron, no question, but it's a it's an Ogron.
Maybe it's a Dalek when it's on film, but an Ogron when it's in the studio.
No, it's an Ogron. An Ogron straight across the board, but it has gone up in my estimation for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
this is the first time I've watched it. When I bought the season 19 Blu-ray, I purposely skipped Time Flight because I just did not want to watch it. Now that I've watched it again for the first time in I don't know how many years, yeah, it's gone up.
I mean, I think we're all sort of in agreement here that episode 1 is really good, right? At least
to a point, yeah.
For
the first 2/3 or so.
Yeah, I usually, often it's a struggle on Pull to Open to make myself watch 2 episodes in a row. This one, I was like, I'm in. And then you get to the end of episode 2, it's the master. Like, okay, that was a crappy reveal, but I'm still in. Like, so it
was a good reveal.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Victory of the Daleks. Victory of the Daleks, the first 15 minutes or so is quite good. And then everything goes to pot after that. But
that first act is awesome. Solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely with you, Chris, on the polling position. I don't think this deserves as low a position as it has done. And also, by the way, this is, I always look at the TARDIS Wikia for any story that we're coming to. This is the only one where they get like super political about it in the opening paragraph. They're like, the stuff before they even get to the plot summary, they're like, Time Flight has been underrated, like, and here's probably why it was underrated. And there was a BBC review,
as you'll have read in that in the season 19 poll in Doctor Who Monthly, back when it was still Doctor Who Monthly. This came roughly in the middle, ahead of Kinda and a couple others. So I mean, back when it went out, it was much less hated.
And I defend that reveal, and I have statistics to back me up. The ratings for episode 3 went from 8.5 million in episode 2 to 9.1 million for episode 3. So
episode 1 was 10.1 million or something.
Yeah,
the highest ratings anywhere in the JNT era or something.
Yeah, I think so. And highest until New Who.
Yeah, I think that shows some word of mouth post Earthshock that this was going on. Well, like the big stuff was going on. But then I understand sort of maybe the fall off episode 2, but it was like, oh, it's the master, and that's boom. Okay. So yeah, good reveal.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there was a lot less TV out there in 1981, 1992. But
it was this or Crossroads.
Didn't have BBC 11 yet. Okay, guys, that was some good stuff. Any final thoughts on Time Flight, or shall we pop into our TARDIS and activate the randomizer?
I got to say one thing from Chris's History Corner, Christine's History Corner, which is also to the point of the casual racism of the episode, the Indian rope trick, which is how the Concorde crew tried to describe to Tegan and Nessa what an illusion is. Like, they're explaining the Indian rope trick. If you actually look at the Indian rope trick, that was we have no evidence that was ever actually a thing. It was probably invented by a Chicago newspaper man in the 19th century who just needed some copy, and I guess he said that some Indian faker did this whole thing with the rope hanging on an invisible wire. So yeah, just want to throw that in there if anyone has watched Time Flight and thinks that's how an Indian rope trick works. Not the case. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I am 100% done with Time Flight now.
Correction for the record. Thank you. That's good. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Always learn something in your corner.
Hey, the corner's always here.
All right. So, Chris, I would love it if, Chris B, I'd love it if you could help us out here and find out where we're going next. So the randomizer, I got ahead of myself. So our randomizer here on Pull to Open consists of two components. One is the Pull to Open Codex, which is a spreadsheet of all televised Doctor Who episodes, all the way from An Unearthly Child through the classic series, through the TV movie, all the way up to Legend of the Sea Devils. Not yet The Power of the Doctor, so that will come very shortly. And there are 301, soon to be 302, by our count. Does not match the exact count in other places you might find because we made some different calls onto what constitutes a complete story. And there's another component to the randomizer, of course. Chris T, could you describe what that is?
Yes, it's the temporal limiter. It's a circuit board. It has a big red thing on it. No, sorry. TARDIS components. Wow. Yes, the other component is random.org, which provides the extra randomness in these 301 numbers by using atmospheric noise, which is so Doctor Who-ish. And I believe it's run by a professor out of Dublin, who I will now forever think of as a Professor Hater kind of character. But yeah, instead of the pseudo randomness of algorithms, this is true randomness. And Chris, would you like to be our guest randomizer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. So you are at random.org, sir?
I am not, but I can get there.
Yeah, so if you go to random.org, you plug in 1 and 301 as the defining factors, and then it may be possible we'll hit a time-locked episode, which we've already seen. We'll bounce off it back into the time stream, but we'll also take note of the randomizer sending us there, because maybe it is trying to send us a message. Yes, but cool. Before we do this, we tend to challenge the randomizer, which is how we got to Time Flight in the first place. Thank you, Pete. And also how it actually listened to my Victorian challenge. I'm kind of amazed by that. Kind of always a little bit scared of the randomizer. We were talking about King Charles. It took us to a King James episode. It feels very TARDIS-y, So Pete, got any challenges?
I do. So since we've just visited the Jurassic era, I'm looking for some kind of Silurian, Sea Devil, or dinosaur connection. Ooh. So I'll take anything from Doctor Who and the Silurians. Where's the Deep? I'll even take something with the Paternoster gang, because there's a Silurian there, or dinosaurs on a spaceship, which has dinosaurs, or Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Give me something dinosaur or Silurian like. I think that's what I want.
And I'm gonna say I want another crashed spaceship, but I would like it to feel more authentic in the way that it just sort of happened to crash land on Earth. I would like a reason to be given, or not. Just give me any crashed spaceship anyway.
And we're in the universe. Okay.
Exactly.
So, Chris B, I'm going to give you a countdown. Are you ready, sir?
Indeed.
All right. Let's do this thing in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Spoilers.
181.
181. I think we're in New Who. We are. It's the Runaway Bride.
Oh, hello,
Look at
Donna.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You get a
crash
spaceship in that one?
It's like
at the end.
I'm excited because we're about to enter a new era of David Tennant and Catherine Tate.
That's right.
In the coming specials, in the 60th anniversary special, and this is we may even get like the first Tate. We don't know what the last few seconds of Power of the Doctor are in terms of regeneration and whatever, but maybe we'll get a hint of that when that happens. Wow.
Do you guys think that Whittaker is going to regenerate into David Tennant? Do you believe in that rumor at all?
I've heard that, and I thought that myself, kind of independently, of like they're deliberately not saying much about that ending, about that regeneration scene.
For whatever it's worth, the press screening did not include the end of the episode, so nobody out there knows.
I heard.
Yeah.
I do love, by the way, in Doctor Who magazine, Jodie said this one thing about the fact that she was pregnant during shooting that scene that I loved. She was like, I had 2 heartbeats. It was method acting.
Yeah.
First method acting of regeneration we've ever seen.
Nice.
Love it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do the regeneration. That was the original rumor. That would be kind of like, I feel like that original rumor has been a little bit left in the dust a bit, and like we haven't really talked about it since. So it would be kind of almost like a coming back around if it actually happened. But I do feel like they got to do it in such a way that it's not just here's some stuff that happened with Tennant's doctor back in the day. I think there's got to be something more to it than that to make it feel more relevant to what's going on now. So I'm gonna, since I can't think of anything else better, like I think what else would they do?
I really hope that if they do that, the first thing Tennant says is, what? 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 Again, nice callback to the Runaway Bride, so perfect timing. Maybe the randomizer's telling us the ending.
All right. Well, speaking of perfect timing, this is perfect timing to say thank you for listening to everyone who has been with us here on our time flight and picking apart that episode. We really appreciate you guys subscribing. Hey, we're a podcast. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast, please do. And at the same time, hey, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to Radio Free Skaro if you haven't already? Come on. It's been around for how long now, Chris? How long is it?
16 and a half years nearly.
16 and a half years. Like you've probably done, in terms of your reviews, the whole run over and over.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And Skaro is still not free, but one day.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the pod. We had an awesome time talking about time flight with you.
Well, thanks for the invite. And thanks for letting me reappraise time flight, I guess. To a point, anyway. To a point.
Up to a point, yes.
We'll find all the stinkers. When we get another one, we'll definitely call you back if you're down for it.
It's not time lash, please.
Time
lash is irredeemable.
My challenge. Time flight, time lash. It's obvious, right?
Yeah. There's the stories involving the word time in the title tend not to be good. So time of the Doctor perhaps being the exception.
No, it's consistent. Okay, guys, thanks so much for listening. Again, we're available wherever you find podcasts. On social, we're at Pull2Open63 on Twitter and Instagram, and Pull2Open, just that, all one word, on TikTok. Feel free to leave a review. We love reviews. They're awesome. Or just drop us a line on any of those networks and comment whatever you want. We will see you next time.
Yeah.
For what did we just say? We got
the Runaway Bride.
The Runaway Bride.
We will see you with
Ten
and Tate on deck next time on Pull2Open. See you guys.
Take care.